Happy vending.
Hello, this is Emily and Mrs. Bill. Today we're going to take off the graphics of a vending machine. Let's get started.
That's right, Emily. We are going to remove these original Powerade graphics from this Royal 8049 G3 machine. These are the original graphics. They're dated. This is an old design. Parts of the front graphic here are cracked. So this just needs to go. We ordered custom graphics from NBS, and we'll be replacing both sides and the plexiglass front here. The first step will be to remove these side graphics. This is what we're going to do first, and then we'll remove the plastic front. We're going to use this heat gun, which you can get at a hardware store, and one of these plastic razor blades so that we don't scratch the surface here. Simply going to start heating this up at the top, getting that decal soft, and then pulling it down, and then start pulling it. And then I'll pull off the pieces. Probably not going to come off in one piece. I'll pull off individual pieces and give them to Emily, and she'll throw them in the trash.
Yep, that sounds like a plan.
Old graphics, they don't help sales.
Oh yeah, they don't.
And since this machine doesn't just sell Powerade, it will help just having a general graphic that says ice cold drinks with the school's logos on it rather than an old, outdated Powerade graphic. Honestly, I think the machine looks better with just black than these old, outdated Powerade graphics.
I think it too, yeah.
All right, looks like we're getting a good sized piece here, Em.
This looks great.
And since I scored this ahead of time, it should start pulling nice along the metal edge.
It's doing it.
Except for there. Good job. Emily's helping there. We're getting a good sized piece.
That is what we call a good sized piece. Go small.
Oh! Softening it up a little bit here.
Yeah.
Softening it up. We just got this little bit here at the top, and then we're done this side, and then of course we have to remove the graphic on the other side. Heat it up.
Yeah, let's show it.
And
kill it.
there it goes. We finished one side. Now let's get the other side. All right, getting the final piece off. Here it comes. And it's gone. All right, so we've just removed the graphics from the side. They're all cleaned up. Now we're going to remove the plexiglass graphic from the front. The first step is to remove power from the machine. I'm just unplugging it. You got to be careful in here because there is 120 volts throughout there with the lights, and you don't want to bump up against a hot wire. You're going to get a shock you won't forget. Now we're going to remove the 3 Christmas tree little inserts in the front. So the first thing with these little Christmas trees is get a screwdriver behind there just to pull it away from the machine a little bit. And then I'm going to put a machete behind it and then just hit it with a hammer. And that just cuts the front of the Christmas tree off. And then you just push it out by hitting the center. And then it falls into the machine. So there's 3 of them, we'll get out that way. Now that we have those removed, we're going to need a 9mm ratchet to remove all of the nuts on the inside. So we open the machine for this. Get inside the door. Now at this point, if this had regular fluorescent bulbs in it, I would remove the fluorescent tubes because you don't want to risk breaking them. This machine we've retrofitted to have LED strips. I'm not going to cut these zip ties and remove them because there's really no major fear of breaking these. It's not like a glass tube. It's going to shatter into 1,000 pieces. So I'm just going to let them go. But remember, the power is off on the machine. Now there is about 32 of these bolts with the nuts on them that hold the outer trim pieces on. Now you don't have to completely remove these. In fact, it's best that you don't. You just want to loosen the nut all the way to the end on every one of these. I probably will take off the top piece of trim completely because it is easier to get the new plexiglass in with that top piece off and then put that piece back in. But the side ones, the bottom ones, I'm just going to loosen them. Now on this side, it's fairly easy to get to them. On the other side of the machine, there's holes drilled in the metal for you to put your ratchet through. Sometimes it helps to have a real long extension, but you do want a deep socket on your ratchet. And once again, this is 9mm. So I'm just going to start loosening these. As you get down to these lower bolts, unless you have a really long extension to go in here, sometimes I find it easier to remove the coin box and the metal holder of the coin box. It just takes 4 Phillips screws to get this off. And then it's real easy to get around in here in the bottom. Now on this machine, there are a couple nuts that are behind the control board that are a little difficult to get to. So you really have to remove the case of the control board to get to those last couple nuts. To loosen them, so that the trim is loose enough to pull out the plexiglass and loose enough to put in the new plexiglass. I'm not going to remove the control board completely, but up here you can see the 4 final nuts that have to be loosened. All right, now I've loosened the 30-some bolts that hold these trim pieces on. The nuts along this top piece I completely removed. But before we try to remove this, we do have to remove this plastic trim piece that goes around the delivery bin. And to do this, there's 4 bolts down here at the bottom, and then there's 2 bolts at the top. The 2 bolts at the top just have to be loosened, but these 4, the nuts on those have to be completely removed. To do that, we go back inside the machine, and using a 7/16 socket, we get them from the sides. The 2 bolts that have to be loosened are on the top of the delivery port. This one and this one over here. All right, now that I removed the 4 bolts on the side and loosened the 2 nuts on the top, this should just pull straight out. Put this aside. You can see where the old plexiglass is cracked here, which is one of the big reasons we're replacing it, plus that this is outdated. This trim piece here supports the plastic front. That you'll leave in place, just sort of dangle it on the change release. You don't want to lose that or break that. Now this should be able to be pulled out. All right, since I'm not really going to save this, I'm not so worried about it getting damaged and removing it, so I'm just going to hit it a couple hard times from inside the machine, and it should just come out fairly easily. The top trim piece, since I took all of those nuts off, that just came right off. Set that aside. All the other trim pieces will stay on because I didn't completely remove the nuts from those. So here is the old display. I will need this for one other step. I'm going to put this off to the side. This is a good time to do some cleaning in the bottom before you put the new display on. Look at all that filth that was in that machine. Take a look at the floor. That's why this is a good step. Take advantage of the machine being open, clean it out. Here I am with the new graphic. This was custom designed by a former student, graduate of the school. We have to drill 3 holes around the edge of this for the Christmas trees to go into. And the best way to determine the position for those holes is to lay it underneath the piece that we just took off and mark the holes that were in the other piece and then drill them. So I've laid the new graphic down and I'm going to lay the old graphic on top of it. These graphics, the new one, we ordered from NBS Graphics. They did a nice job cutting it to the exact specifications of the machine, which they have those blueprints on file, but they don't pre-drill those little holes for the Christmas trees. So I'm going to line this up and then mark the holes and then drill them. There's 3 of these holes that you have to mark off. Sometimes you have to really drill these holes bigger than they need to be because it can be a challenge getting those little Christmas trees through them. And sometimes you need a little extra space. Once you got them marked, remove the old piece and then do your drilling. I still have the protective plastic on the front of this, so that's protecting it from getting damaged on the other side. Open up the hole a little bit so that the Christmas tree can definitely get into it. All right. We're ready to put this piece into place. Now I'm going to lift it up, put the bottom in, slide it to the right. It's going to take a lot of finagling. Sliding it in to all the grooves. Now this is this little piece that fell out. It goes behind here. I'm going to stick that back in there. Have it dangling on the chain, the change. I'm going to have this dangling on the change holder. It's in pretty good place now. I am going to, at this point, pull off the plastic protective coating on it before I push it into the left side, because sometimes this can be a challenge to get off once the trim is all around it. There is only a protective coating on the front. You got to be careful of the back side, because when that gets damaged, you will see it come through. Now that we have that protective plastic off, we got to try to bend it and get it to fall within the right channel. Okay, it's starting to fall into the channel now. There we go. It's looking pretty good. Push everything in. Everything seems to be lining up. You can see where the Christmas tree holes need to go. Now that we have everything pretty well in place, I do like to try to use a screwdriver to line up the holes for the Christmas trees. Make sure that they're going to go in. And then it's just a matter of doing everything in reverse. And I'm going to start by getting this trim around the delivery bin, putting the trim piece back up on the top, getting the Christmas trees in there, and then just tightening up all those nuts, all 32 of them. Never make anything too tight until you have everything in place. Because sometimes you have to move things around to get them to fit. And when things are still a little loose, it's easier to move them around. Started tightening up things too early. Some people leave this metal piece out. I like it completely in. If if you have to move the machine, you want the machine narrower. Lining up the hole for one of the Christmas trees. Use new Christmas trees for this. This is what they look like when they're new. They got a point on them. You can't reuse the old ones. Once they go in there, they're done. If you have trouble getting in the Christmas trees, you can use a drill and try to open up the holes a little bit. Now it's time to put the top trim piece on. These bolts fit in a channel and they actually can slide around. You gotta line them up to where the holes are in the machine so that this piece can go back in. You also have to line it up with where the Christmas tree needs to go in there as well. Now that I have the top trim piece pretty well lined up, it's time to put in the last Christmas tree right in the center. Now I can go in the back and tighten up all the nuts. Once you get the control box in, don't forget the piece of plastic that protects it from the elements. Finally down to the last nut for the trim pieces. Just got to put this cash box back. Make sure you put the part with the opening up top, because that's where the coins fall to get inside the coin box. I'll put those 2 dimes that I found in the coin box. All right, now that everything's in place, we'll close her up, plug it in, and see how it looks with the lights on. Now it is a little dirty. I'll have to wipe it down with a wet cloth, but I'll do that after I get the sides done. So there we go. Now we're going to do the hardest part of the project, getting the side decal on. Now I already wiped off most of the glue adhesive from the previous decal, but that was a little while ago, so one last time I'm going to hit the side with some rubbing alcohol just to make sure it's clean for the new decal. Now there are some dents in this vending machine, so I'm not expecting the new decal to go on perfectly. Sometimes you just got to ride over top of these dents. I'm not going to do body work on this machine. All right, looks good. This is the new decal. This is a protective cover on the front of it. You want to leave this protective covering on until you get it up there and you push out any of the air bubbles. This is the back. Before I put it on, I just make sure it's the right size, sort of see how high up I need to go, how far down it's going to go. On this one, I'm going to be pretty much close to the top, maybe a 1/4 inch down, 1/4 inch from this hinge, right about there. That way, if it goes on a little crooked, I'm not bump it up against this, and then I'm going to have to trim that. Once you start putting this down and pushing it out, you really are not going to be able to pull the decal off without creasing it. So you want to make sure you got it just the way it needs to go. And you're also going to need a vinyl squeegee when you start so that you can push out the air bubbles. You should start in the center and push them out as you come down with this. So I'm going to start peeling off the back of the vinyl decal. Just going to fold it back a little bit to expose the top. You don't want to take this off completely. And I'm going to line it up here, right where I had it before. It looks good. And I'm going to push it down. Now, you want to start in the center, like I said, with your squeegee and push out the air bubbles both ways. And then you're just going to be coming down, pushing out air bubbles. At this point, I really can't lift it up. If I try to lift it off at this point, probably would damage the vinyl. Now, this whole procedure, I'm not an expert at it. I mean, if you do this as for a living, you're going to get to a point where you get no air bubbles. But, I mean, there's always a couple air bubbles when I'm done, because I'm just a beginner. If you get a real big air bubble, you can always pop it with the tip of an X-Acto knife and just push it down to like get that out. If you have an assistant, like I have Lauren here, your assistant can put even pressure on it. Now, not pulling too tight, but even pressure as the other person is pushing out air bubbles to the sides. Some backing. We're making sales as we do this. That's important. That's why we do this. To make the machines look better. We've got a young man over there. He got, what did you get there? He got a Berry Propel because he saw how attractive the machine is looking and it drew him over for that sale. And that's what this is all about. Now, this machine is located in a high school. So this logo we're putting on the side has a big B on it, which is the initial of the school, which is good. Now, some people do this, what we call wet style, like they may spray the machine down with some Windex or something and put the decal on while it's wet. And what that allows you to do is to pull off the decal a little bit if it's going on crooked. But when you're doing the wet style, then you have to be pushing out all that liquid out the sides. Ain't nobody got time for that. So I'm just going dry. And like I said, hoping for the best, as few of air bubbles as possible. If anybody has any tips or tricks for doing this, feel free to put them in the comments below. Of course, it'll be too late for me because I'm done this, but it might help somebody else. All right, we're getting close to the bottom here. Ooh. I want to avoid pulling it off like I just did there, but I do have a little bit of an air bubble here. I'm going to try to get it out. All right, I made it to the bottom. Before I pull off the protective coat, just try to push out a little bit more here, get out as many of the air bubbles as I can. Can't go too crazy on this because you will crease the vinyl underneath. Oh, I heard a big air bubble there. Now that we have it on pretty good, I'm going to just start peeling this off here. And hopefully when you're peeling it off, it's not peeling the decal with it. And you just pull it down, nice and easy. I mean, I see some air bubbles in there, but it's not too terrible. From a distance, most people won't even notice. And remember, this is an old machine. It didn't have a perfect surface. There were some dents in it. Not too bad, not too shabby. Got the school logo here, the B. Freshens up the machine. All right, so that's it. We've replaced the front graphic and the side graphics on this Royal 8049 machine, and it really livened up the machine, made it look almost new again. That's all. I'm Bill. As always, happy vending.